Dave is one of these guys that is currently fucked up, and we are going to try to rebuild Dave Tate. You know, over the years, trashing the body, doing world-class things under the bar, it takes its toll. Dave's dealing with some big orthopedic issues, and after going through some of his medical history, some of his training history, and his current training status, we have some work to do. That's why I'm here at the elitefts headquarters, and we're going to be spending an entire day assessing, evaluating, and getting a game plan to move Dave Tate forward. So we had a big day of testing today, multiple hours with Dave on the ground, going through movement screens, going through orthopedic-based assessment. We sat down, we have a plan of care, we have our linchpins that we're going to go after, but that's all theoretical. We need to actually have Dave step in the gym, step into his element, and let me kind of assess the way that he's moving, the way that he's loading, the variations that he's using with the big 6 foundational movement patterns. And I'm gonna sit back here and I'm gonna let Dave do his thing, and I'm gonna just look at it from an assessment standpoint that we're gonna break down after this training session. But it's important to note that, you know, you can talk about all the shit in the world. You can talk about activation and mobilization on the table. Nothing means shit until you actually step into the gym, throw some load on you, and actually see what it is to move authentically like you're gonna actually train. So that's exactly what we're gonna see here. So I'm gonna avoid going through and actually trying to coach Dave during these movements, because the last thing that you wanna do is coach and train at the same time. This is the time to train, for me to view training, and then after this we're gonna break it down, and hopefully we can pick up a couple tidbits that Dave can be thinking about on these big compound lifts. But also we're gonna go in and start teaching some of those accessory lifts, some of those mobility drills, and also some of those activation drills that we talked about previously. So anytime we're trying to assess somebody in their own element, you know, Dave's in his own environment right here, it's more so about the mental aspect of training, how they're preparing and stepping up on the rack, what kind of stability patterns that they're using, what kind of mental rehearsal they're using, the kind of consistency that they have. And when we're looking at this setup, you know, this is a pretty dialed in height for Dave right now. This is something that stays within his contraindications of that 90-degree flexion moment at the hips with both of those bilateral hip replacements. But really what I'm trying to look at is one joint at a time. And there's a lot of shit going on in a compound movement pattern like the squat, and really we need to be looking from the ground up, starting at the foot contact, going through the ankles, all the way up through the knees, the hips, the pelvis and the torso, spinal positioning, and then shoulder positioning. So every single set that he gets in on here, I'm trying to focus on one different thing at a time. And then we're also stepping back and looking at a couple different angles. So I'll look at the back oblique angle here, front oblique angle, directly from the side, directly from the front, directly from the back. We can see compensation patterns hit, we can see lateral hip shifts, things along these lines. So as a coach, you kind of want to move around and you want to make sure that you yield as much data from moving your body around the rack, around the movement pattern, so they can do their thing and you can assess as good as possible. I think a big thing that's missed in clinical practice, trying to look at pain provocation patterns with the big lifts, is actually adding a fucking load to the big lifts. It's all well and good to have the dowel up over your head, trying to standardize somebody's squat-based movement assessment, but it's a totally different thing when you see somebody trying to stack plates on the bar, getting up to a near maximal load, and actually performing against the challenge of load. So whenever possible, that's the best time to actually see the compensation patterns hit, to see the weak links present. As we add movement speed and velocity to a movement, compensation patterns hit. As we add loading, compensation patterns will hit at an increased rate. So this is a really great chance to watch an athlete work, to see what they're doing in terms of the way that they're training, and then to see if things present at X amount of load that they didn't present with at Y amount of load, and see really the biggest differences in the movement patterns themselves. So we'll notice between the last two sets, we have some duct tape that's gone on around the knee or around the calf. You know, take note of that kind of stuff, because, you know, we got 3 plates deep, the 4th plate, some other shit needs to happen. Obviously, we're gonna talk to Dave about it after the session, why he chose to do some of this stuff. But also, we just wanna watch and learn here, seeing how that altered his mechanics, That one we're really looking at his knee, the way that he creates torque and tension at the hips that shows up with the abduction moment at the knee, external rotation moment at the knee. That was the biggest thing that I was seeing on this left side. And really with the right side, again, we're not gonna be missing anything with the orange duct tape on there. So that's gonna be something that we continuously look at here, because there is a rhyme and a reason to why Dave's doing some of this stuff as he goes through and adds load to his squat here. So I love that set from a diagnostic standpoint, because it was getting closer and closer to failure there. You could see kind of some breakdown, some speed changes between rep and rep. And by that second last rep, we could really see some moving parts that weren't present on the first, second, and third reps. So that's all stuff that, again, on an assessment standpoint, yeah, we're gonna compensate. We're gonna hit compensation when we're training hard and training heavy, but we wanna know what's the first compensating thing that hits. That's going to usually be the weakest link. Just from this angle that I was at right now, I was really honing in on that right hip. We could see some shaking, really. I think it was stemming from that right hip stability standpoint. And it was something that it got a little bit more progressively shaky as the set went on, but also it altered the knee angle as that set went on as well, kind of dropping into a little bit more of an internal rotated moment, kind of put all those muscles that we were testing today in the functional movement screen, also in orthopedic assessment and the balance assessment. It kind of put it on test. Under a couple 100 pounds, it tested that from a time under tension standpoint, and just the ability to do its primary role, which is stabilize that hip. So we saw some things on that right side that we didn't see on the left side. So that was really, really helpful to get more of a max effort set in there. Not to call you out on this, but we had zero warm-up process except for a little bit of activation work on
I put on the loop, and I put the percussor on my leg a little bit.
All right. Well,
I know, you're right.
Like low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
We're just gonna be picking that shit left and right.
I didn't want to change it. I mean,
No. I'm here to view, and this is stuff that I view. And it's great because it's, again, things that we can put into a system, simple systems. We can work on a couple things at a time. It's going to pay off dividends. So we're shifting gears here a little bit. We did the high box squat here with the spider bar. We got up, we actually saw some stuff with close to a 5 RM load there. That was really, really good. We're shifting gears now though, because I want to see Dave in more of an authentic squat setup. So a little bit more narrow at the feet, the way that normal Joe or Jane would set up. And we're gonna be using a tool that he's been using consistently over the last training cycle or so with the Tsunami bar. The biggest thing about this is it really brings instabilities to the forefront because of the instability of the bar itself. So it allows you to move a little bit slower, to really kick on some of those key stabilizers. But it's going to be a hell of a way to look at some of these compensation patterns that we've been seeing throughout today. So we're going to let Dave do his thing and just kind of assess it exactly like we did the last one.
The reason for the straps is only because I can't hold the bar normally. If I could hold the bar normally, I wouldn't use the straps, because I know people are going to say, what's he using the straps for? And by the way, for all the people that talk about my hood up, I put it up so it doesn't get in the way of the fucking bar. If you squat with the bar and the hood, you're a fucking idiot. You don't know anything about biomechanics. Jesus Christ, keep this on down. He's doing it to be hardcore. I'm doing it to be smart, you dumb fuck.
That first set honestly just blew me away. I was expecting a little bit different of an execution level than I just saw. I saw some good shit right there. A couple of those reps were on point. Spinal position was very, very good, going into some deeper depth on the squat. and hitting some deeper depth with really good pelvic control, which we didn't necessarily see in the last one or throughout our testing. And in terms of the ground contact at the feet, everything was locked in. We had full ground contact in 3 different stances as Dave was changing. He started out a little bit wider, went abducted at the toes, and then went narrow. And really, we saw that Dave has a ton of mobility at the hips. And in terms of utilizing that mobility, he just transferred it pretty well into more of an authentic squat here. Yeah, we're gonna keep on watching it.
On my end, what I'm doing here is I use this for force development. I don't use it a lot, but I'll use it for short phases. So that being my first set, I'm trying to find what stance I can develop force in that's not gonna create pain.
Yeah.
So I want to use the closer one, but it's not gonna happen.
How'd that second one feel for you?
Better. So when I moved it out to open the knees up a little bit to allow my stomach to come in a little bit, that allowed me to start generating the force I want to generate. You gotta be careful with this bar because if I generate too much, it will fly off my back.
Yep.
Which is why I use bumpers, because sometimes I do have to throw it off my back. I won't use a lot of weight. I might put on another quarter, maybe 45 more pounds. But the next set, I will start generating as much force as I can. So the reps are gonna fall real quick to triples, maybe doubles. Because as soon as I feel that I can't create the rate of force with the next rep, I stop. So to me, that's the most important thing for force development, is as soon as it drops, you're negating the purpose. Absolutely. The whole thing.
I really like that second stance, not the wide one, but you moved your feet in and you toed out a tiny bit. I don't give a shit about the feet. The feet isn't what I look at. I look at hip centration moment. Where can we get that ball and socket smack dab in the middle so all of those stabilizers throughout the hip and pelvic complex can actually do what the fuck they're supposed to do? And then that translates into increased force development.
Yes.
If we can stabilize, we have less force leaks, boom, it comes up through the chain. But in terms of a biomechanical position, that's what looked best for me in terms of hip and knee tracking together, having your feet in the proper position, and having a torso angle that was really truly authentic because you had zero flexion happening at the lumbar spine. You had zero dumping of the pelvis either. Mm-hmm. That was the best squat I've seen all day, by far. So we started seeing some cool stuff when we kind of got Dave under the unstable bar, and then we started moving with a little bit more force velocity. And the big thing that we were trying to work on with Dave was not trying to position his pelvis into a neutral position, but rather have the big key stabilizing muscles, the glutes, the hamstrings, and the adductors play a role in stabilizing the hip, centrating the hip, and getting the pelvis into a more neutral position before he even goes down into that eccentric moment of the squat. You know, the big cue that worked for Dave was that pre-tension co-contraction cue. But you know, everyone is taught to brace hard and heavy at a maximal capacity. Sometimes we gotta grade that back and we have to be more agile, so we try to be a little bit smoother with it. So by the last set, Dave got 3 or 4 really good reps in there. You know, I was palpating some asses, which was always fun, but we could really feel that tension build up on the backside of the glute, lateral hamstring group, and even into those adductors. Left side was a little bit better than that right side, but again, we know we have some deficits bilaterally on that stuff.
So after going through Dave's movement assessment yesterday, getting some subjective history, and then actually watching a training session and moving through some foundational movement patterns in the accessory work yesterday, our big ticket item for today is looking at rebuilding Dave's foundational movement patterns. And really the first place to start off with is a 6-phase foundational movement pattern warm-up sequence. So this 6-phase sequence